Hi folks, Matt McSpirit here, back again at Ignite. This time I'm joined by Sarah Cooley from Microsoft to talk about all things AKS. Welcome.
Hi, nice to catch up with you, Matt.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Yeah. Nice, hanging out just by the escalators in a rather glamorous location, but we can see Cheesecake Factory, so it's not all bad. Now, those of you who checked out some of the sessions at Ignite, and in particular the keynote, would have seen a ton of announcements around AKS. And if you're not familiar with AKS, the Azure Kubernetes Service, been around in Azure for a number of years, extremely popular way of running, managing, orchestrating your containerized applications. And then back at Build last year, so last calendar year 2021, AKS on Azure Stack HCI and Windows Server was released into the wild as a way to easily consume the Azure Kubernetes Service in an on-premises environment, so at the edge, in the core data center. Mm-hmm. And it really has, release on release since then, just grown in capabilities, features, functionality, tons of improvements. And there's been a good number of announcements here at Ignite that I wanted Sarah to take us through. So Sarah, why don't you help us understand initially some of the core enhancements that have gone into AKS in this set of announcements?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, looking back really quickly, there have just been a ton of changes to the AKS platform since we GA'd last year. The ones I am most personally proud of, we've added a ton of day 2 configurations so that folks who have longer running deployments are going to find that the service manages all of the internal certificates that they need and stays up and is easy to update at scale on a multi-node cluster, which is actually a pretty unique thing. So
and pretty important.
Yeah, and very important.
Yeah.
So if you have AKS running as a service on a failover cluster on both Azure Stack HCI and Windows Server, if you run update, it'll update across all of your nodes and just manage all of the internal needs that Kubernetes has. So I've been very happy with the work that we've done in the past year to make it easy to keep AKS in a good place, day 2 especially.
Nice.
We've also added a lot more configurations to how you can support proxy settings and all of those things that we're discovering folks have in their environment.
Yeah.
So lots of newness, especially around environment support, managing security updates, day 2 config. Cool. And that's been delightful to see. We've also updated from Mariner 1.0 to 2.0. So latest, greatest, and gives us the ability to unlock some new paths forward, especially around updates that I'm very excited about, smaller images, etc.
I heard that the image, the Mariner 2.0, 50% smaller.
It is 50% smaller and should have better compatibility. The Mariner team has done amazing things. Should definitely go and learn more about Mariner if you get a chance, because it's a lot of fun.
And that is a Microsoft supported Linux distribution if you're not familiar.
Yeah. Right. We've also done work to integrate with SDN. So software defined networking is now fully supported on AKS on HCI, which is lovely. So that helps replace the load balancer in a way where your networking load balancer balances across Kubernetes and all of the other virtualized workloads. So HCI can be aware of everything you're running and do the right load balancing with the SDN switch. So that's been a really nice thing for our customers using SDN. I'm really excited to have that integration in. But looking at Ignite, I'm so jazzed about all of the announcements at Ignite.
Yeah.
So probably the one that's going to be biggest for the folks using AKS today is we announced Azure Hybrid benefits. So what this does is we've heard from folks that for people who are deeply invested in Windows and in Microsoft and already have software assurance, that the consumption-based licensing model that we have had on top of the HCI licensing has made the product more expensive than we would like, and not doesn't take advantage of that commitment and that relationship that they've had with Microsoft. Yeah. So we're now making sure that we are honoring the existing commitment that software assurance customers have. We're lowering the price for AKS on-prem generally for everyone, but also bundling it with software assurance. So that's going to be a really big deal for folks who have Microsoft end-to-end and have that agreement with Microsoft. So hopefully that makes the decision to use AKS on-prem and AKS hybrid deployment options easier for those customers.
It was a huge, I think, the buzz on Twitter around that particular announcement, not just for AKS HCI, but also just Azure Stack HCI in general. And so as a recap, if you do have an investment in Windows Server with software assurance today, that's an existing agreement you already have, then what that essentially means is you could lay down Azure Stack HCI on the metal, and normally that would be a $10 per physical core charge to an Azure subscription. But that is essentially waived because you've now got this this software assurance benefit. So that's at the Azure Stack HCI layer. Then you can install and run, deploy AKS on top of there, AKS HCI in this example. And previously there would have been a fee associated with the worker node vCPUs for running your clusters. And so what we're saying is, as part of the hybrid benefit, that's eliminated as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay. Yeah, thank you for the extra context. And certainly we have previously and continue to with AKS on Azure Stack HCI included Azure GitOps. So you can use GitOps and all of the tools that come with GitOps integration, and Azure Policy, and that's going to continue to be true. So still integrated Azure Policy.
That's a good segue, actually, because they form part of some of the management benefits around managing Kubernetes clusters that live outside of Azure, of which AKS on HCI is one example. And so when it comes to managing through Arc, talk us through some of the enhancements, because I know there's a big one that I want you to break the news for folks that haven't caught yet around Lifecycle management for Kubernetes clusters.
Yeah, this is the one, like, putting on my technologist nerd hat, I am so excited that we've been able to move from private preview to public preview, the ability to do cluster lifecycle management for worker node clusters directly from Azure Arc and Azure Portal. So what this means is we're now using, so Arc provides technology to use Azure Resource Manager, so ARM templates, AZCLI, and other Azure tools within Kubernetes, and you can do that with a connected cluster. What we are now doing is bringing that to the cluster lifecycle management, so you can create clusters directly from Azure Portal and do cluster upgrade and other lifecycle management things from Azure Portal.
Right. And
the thing that's wonderful about that is it gets us one step closer to this dream that we all share, to have one ops team that can manage your on-prem resources in a distributed way globally, using Azure as a security framework for command and control type of stuff.
That consistency is there, your experiences, whether it's graphically, and I'm sure in the future programmatically, you know, where do I want to deploy that cluster to as part of perhaps a development pipeline, or even just a one-off deployment. You've just got that consistency of, well, I just need to deploy to that endpoint or that endpoint, and that one's in the public cloud, that one's on-prem, that one's in a manufacturing location.
And I just can't contain my enthusiasm, because it makes the integration with Azure Active Directory and Azure Policy so much richer to be able to control those roles and features like that Azure RBAC, role-based access control story from Azure in a way where all of those management controls are also in Azure. So that Azure Active Directory integration just becomes so much more interesting for your dev and your ops team to have more things available in that same framework. And you were talking about programmatically, we have ARM template support. So you can use ARM templates that are going to look very similar to AKS in Azure, and you can use AZCLI that looks very similar to AKS in Azure. So there's that consistency across AKS in Azure, AKS on your custom locations, your AKS hybrid deployment wherever it's running, and on HCI, on Windows Server, and now on Windows IoT too. The provision cluster preview is right now for HCI and Windows Server, so we'll bring it to the other platforms.
Well, before we dive into that IoT little nugget that you dropped there, but let's just build a scenario for folks who perhaps are new to AKS. So at the base layer, you've got on the metal, you've got the Azure Stack HCI software. That's running on, ideally, the Dell integrated system for Azure Stack HCI. Good choice. And then on top of there, you've deployed AKS on Azure Stack HCI, and you've deployed the management infrastructure, and then you've deployed a set of workload clusters, worker nodes that are running your applications. And those could be Windows-based or Linux-based using Mariner 2.0, or the Windows-based images that Microsoft provide you. So we curate the images and provide them to you. And then you've connected those workload clusters to Azure as part of the creation, part of the deployment process. And now you're saying, well, actually, rather than me create them using PowerShell or Windows Admin Center, I've got this third option that I can actually just use Azure to deploy those and create those workload clusters specifically. You'll still have to install AKS HCI using the PowerShell/Windows Admin Center approach. Just those worker clusters. Someday
I would love to be able to install from anywhere too. But right now, this is install locally on-prem with WAC and PowerShell. And then from there on, you can use this preview to be able to deploy clusters directly from Azure. And again, this is in preview, but I really, really want to get feedback. I'm very excited about the things that customers could be doing and that you all could be doing. With Azure provision clusters and all of the integration with Azure. Really quickly before moving on, the thing that I am also really excited about with the one decentralized ops team that can work anywhere, for folks who have a really highly distributed edge, I think that this is one of those things that really shines for people that we see who have like even a single node, but a 2-node cluster and maybe have tens, if not hundreds of endpoint locations. that centralization on Azure is going to be so much better for staging upgrades and so much easier for that whole maintenance cycle throughout the course of that distributed edge lifetime. So, I mean, I'm excited for our data center customers, but I'm especially excited for the folks who have a distributed edge environment. Awesome. It's going to be great.
Yeah, we're certainly seeing a lot of interest in those remote manufacturing, retail, those distributed environments where they need that small scale compute for key workloads, some of which may be VM-based, some of which may be containerized. So, we're definitely seeing a lot of interest in there. And if you want feedback, I'll put Sarah's email in the name.
Yeah, you can just email me directly. No, please don't.
But we can put some links in the description there to help links to feedback and whatnot. But let's you name dropped it before, the Windows the
AKS on IoT
or AKS Lite, as Sarah referring to. Take us through what that is and why that change came about and what some of the use cases are.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've known that we need to have an AKS option that's available on the light edge. So think IoT environments where you have a lot of
small devices.
Yeah, really small devices that need to be able to connect up to a centralized hub and more of those IoT workflows. So we now have AKS Lite, which is AKS on IoT, which can run on Windows 11. So this is really AKS on a Windows 11 IoT environment that gives you a light edge solution. So you can run Azure Kubernetes Service, and you have that Arc integration that we've talked about. Not provision clusters yet, but you still have that connected Arc experience where you can go through and use Arc to manage your clusters.
So once you've deployed it, you would manually connect it.
You'd connect your clusters up to Arc, and then you get all of the great Kubernetes value that comes from Arc, including Azure Policy and Defender and stuff like that. So you get those great Arc tools that you know and love on a lighter edge device. So this is especially something that we've seen be really great for developer workflows or for being able to bring workloads into a smaller environment where you maybe need like an AI ML solution that's living on a smaller footprint edge for like image recognition or what have you. So that's really exciting. I'm really excited to see what folks do with this preview. There are a number of really good demos. I'll make sure that we link. Some of my favorites are using Flux v2 to be able to do development in either AKS or on the edge, and then change the target location in a YAML file to target either AKS in Azure or AKS on the edge, and to add peripherals like cameras to the Kubernetes and cluster, and just click go and it just works. It just works.
Awesome. That's really cool. Yeah, and that goes back to the distribution, the distributed infrastructures that people have, edge locations now. That have both perhaps the heavier edge footprint where they may need some more horsepower, more compute, and then some of these lighter edge devices that may also need to run Kubernetes based.
And higher availability. It's basically the trade-off between how much hardware you're going to have available to use and the availability that you want by having a failover cluster multi-node environment. So you get to have that trade-off between something with a little bit more scale up, better failover capacity, or something that's going to be lighter and going to be more flexible and whatever your environment looks like. So slowly getting to the point where you can have one dev team, one ops team doing whatever they need to do anywhere, wherever they need to run AKS. Awesome. Which is always the dream.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I think that's all my questions. Anything else you want to finish with, or you just go test it out? I
guess. Go try it. We'll put links attached to the video for how to try out the Arc Provision Cluster preview, how to get started with AKS on HCI, AKS on IoT, and all of the other goodness that you see at Ignite.
Cool. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time, folks. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you.